I still remember the afternoon I discovered that cruel omission. My phone buzzed with the usual flurry of group chat emojis and inside jokes. But when I scrolled to the thread announcing our annual girls' weekend getaway, my heart sank. Every name I recognized: Jessica, Maya, Tiffany, even Colleen, who had moved to Chicago 6 months ago. But mine was not there. No clever nickname, no little heart icons beside it. Nothing. It was as if I didn't exist. At first, I assumed it was a glitch. Maybe my phone hadn't refreshed. I tapped refresh, but the list remained unchanged. Jessica, who had been my roommate for 2 years during college, was there. Maya, my other college roommate, was there. The girls who had seen me through heartbreaks, career stumbles, and late-night meltdowns were all on that list. But me? I was absent. I stared at the screen, my reflection ghosted in the black glass of my iPhone. My pulse throbbed in my temples. Maybe someone simply forgot to add me, but deep down, I knew this was no accident. 10 minutes earlier, I was laughing about which bar we might hit on Friday night. Now, I felt hollow, as if the collective laughter had evaporated, leaving behind an echo of betrayal. I texted Jessica, "Hey, did you see the invite? I didn't get it?" She responded with a sad face emoji and, "So weird, let me check." Within minutes, her reply had been deleted. The message thread didn't change whether I refreshed or reopened it. When she finally messaged again, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I must have messed up." My stomach twisted. It wasn't a mistake. Someone on that admin thread had intentionally omitted me, and now I felt like a ghost in what had once been the most important group in my life. That evening, I stood before my bathroom mirror, studying my reflection. I splashed cold water on my face, but the sting only sharpened my sense of abandonment. For years, I'd believed that my friends, my chosen family, would never let something like this happen. We had seen each other through breakups, promotions, and our deepest insecurities. We were bound by late-night confessions and shared jokes about inside trivia no one else would understand. I thought we were inseparable, and yet here I was, shut out without a single explanation. Later, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan's soft hum. My mind churned. Did I do something wrong? Was there tension I hadn't noticed? A paragraph from a year ago floated in my head. You can't unring a bell or untext a group invitation. But that felt insufficient. The bigger blow was not the missing invitation itself, but the realization that even my closest confidants could erase me from their lives with a few taps on a screen. Guilt and anger wrestled inside me. On one hand, I felt ashamed that I hadn't sensed this coming, ashamed that maybe I'd been too needy or too clingy or simply not interested enough. On the other, a boiling rage erupted. How dare they exclude me without a word, as though the years we'd spent together meant nothing. The memories of laughter on balconies, late-night karaoke performances, and marathon study sessions took on a bitter tinge. Every smile in those snapshots now felt like a lie. Around 3 a.m., unable to sleep, I retrieved my laptop and scrolled through our old photos. Snapshots of college graduation parties, holiday cookie exchanges, New Year's Eve countdowns. In every single one, I was at the center, until this moment, when I had vanished entirely. In one photo, we were huddled under holiday lights on campus, arms thrown around each other's shoulders. In another, we stood on a rooftop overlooking the city, glass champagne flutes pointed heavenward. But here, on my phone now, I was nowhere. The absence of my name burned hotter than any written insult ever could. When dawn finally broke, I stepped onto the small balcony of my Seattle apartment and inhaled the crisp spring air. The sky was bruised shades of purple, peach, and lavender, as though the sunrise was a gentle apology for the betrayal I'd endured. In that fragile morning light, I realized life doesn't wait for an invitation. If my friends considered me dispensable, I would prove them wrong, on my own terms. The idea struck me fully only when I felt that first thin sliver of dawn settle in the sky. I could either sit alone, staring at the walls of my apartment until the hurt festered, or I could chart my own course. I closed my eyes and felt a surge of determination. If they could plan a weekend without me, I would plan an escape so dazzling, so unexpected, that they'd never see it coming. Their memory of me would be replaced by something far greater. The image of me daring to go it alone, not as a cruel joke, but as a bold statement of independence. That evening, after work, I returned to my apartment, still reeling from the afternoon's events. The sky was darkening, and the first few stars were blinking on. I set my bag down on the kitchen counter, opened my laptop, and typed "last-minute Caribbean cruise." My heart pounded as the search results loaded splashy advertisements. Escape today. 3 nights in paradise. Book now. I clicked on the first link. The images of turquoise water, white sand beaches, and swaying palm trees felt like a lifeline. I found an itinerary that hit 3 of the most coveted islands: Key West, the Bahamas, and Cozumel. It departed from Miami in 2 days, for 3 nights, just enough time to reset, to breathe, to reclaim myself. The pricing was steep, but manageable if I dipped into savings. After a quick mental calculation and one deep exhale, I clicked Book Now. The credit card information screen stared back at me like the final hurdle between me and freedom. In that split second, I thought of the group chat members blissfully unaware of my absence, sipping cocktails in a Miami pool. My fingers hit confirm, and a small pop-up read, "Congratulations, your Caribbean cruise is booked." My heart leaped as if I had just punched the air. The click of the confirmation button echoed in my mind. If you erase me, I'll show you that I can shine on my own. I whispered to myself, you might have forgotten me, but I will never forget who I am. 2 days later, I arrived at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, bright and early. My suitcase felt deceptively heavy in my hand, as though it contained not only clothes and toiletries, but all the pent-up sorrow and anger I'd been carrying. The terminal buzzed with families and couples clutching boarding passes, all seemingly wrapped in their own excited bubbles. In contrast, I maneuvered through the crowd alone, braced for a solo adventure that I hoped would put me back together. Boarding the plane to Miami, my chest felt like it might burst with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I chose a window seat and watched the Pacific Northwest landscape shrink beneath us. The Puget Sound twinkling, the Elliott Bay ferry boats scuttling like silver ants, the Olympic Mountains receding into a layer of clouds. With every ascending minute, my chest lightened. Soon enough, the only thing below was an endless blue horizon. A couple rows ahead, a young woman chatted animatedly with her companion about their joint itinerary. A bachelorette party. I closed my eyes, feeling a twinge of envy, then reminded myself I didn't need their approval to enjoy my time. I had forged this journey to claim my own worth, not to conceal my resentments. The flight was surprisingly smooth, As we began our descent into Miami International, I peered out the window and caught sight of an ocean that clasped the coastline in one brilliant arc of teal and navy. Palm trees flanked the runway as we touched down. I exhaled a rush of relief. This was it. I had boarded the plane alone, but I would claim my new story on my own terms. Stepping off the tarmac into the humid Miami air felt like being embraced by a warm, salty blanket. The heat pressed against me like an anticipatory wave. I picked up my luggage and hailed a taxi to the port of Miami. The streets pulsed with life, the bright neon lights of cafes, the honking of passing cars, the faint strains of salsa music drifting from unseen speakers. In that moment, I felt the first trace of genuine excitement I had experienced in weeks. At the cruise terminal, long lines of passengers waited to check in. I joined the end of the queue, noticing that most were traveling as couples, families, or friend groups. I clutched my boarding pass like a talisman. When my turn came, a cheerful attendant scanned it and stapled a lightweight wristband around my wrist. Stateroom 8104. I walked up a gangway that tingled beneath my feet, the hum of the engines echoing in my ears. I paused halfway to let my gaze wander out toward the open sea. The ship itself was dazzling. White hull, gleaming portholes, vast decks rising in tiered balconies. The hull's metal reflected the early afternoon sun, reminding me of a massive city on the water. Inside, the grand lobby was an opulent swirl of marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and sweeping staircases. A string quartet performed near an elevated balcony where well-dressed passengers sipped champagne in crystal flutes. I passed under their gaze, feeling for the first time that I was embarking on something transformative. I found the elevators to floor 8 and stepped into the hall on deck 8, where cabin 8104 awaited me. The corridor felt quiet and polished. I slid my keycard in the door lock, one click, and entered my home for the next 3 nights. My cabin was compact but well appointed. A queen-size bed with crisp white linens, a small desk under a porthole, and a sliding glass door leading to a private balcony. The smell of fresh linens mingled with a faint hint of ocean spray coming through the slightly open balcony doors. I dropped my suitcase onto the edge of the bed and walked to the balcony. Below, crew members readied deck furniture for passengers, and off in the distance, I could see the Miami skyline sliding farther away. I let the sense of aloneness settle around me. For so long, my identity had tied itself to group invitations, to inside jokes, to a shared history. Now, the only person I needed to answer to was myself. I closed my eyes, breathed in the humid breeze, and felt my chest unclench. This small space was mine. No expectations, no apologies needed. After unpacking, I changed into comfortable linen pants and a lightweight shirt. Then I ventured out to explore the ship. The grand lobby descended in 3 tiers of balconies, each lined with glass railings overlooking a massive chandelier. To my left, a marble staircase swept down to an open atrium, where a string ensemble continued to play. I wove through corridors until I discovered the main dining room, its doors flung open to the deck. A flight of steps led down to a vast salon with elegantly set tables, silverware gleaming under warm overhead lights, and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the sea. The seating signs read, "Reserved, Ms. Davis, Table 104. I slipped in behind an ivory curtain and eased into my seat. I glanced at my menu. Caribbean-inspired dishes, including jerk-spiced chicken, blackened mahi-mahi, and mango passion fruit ceviche. I ordered the mahi-mahi with citrus salsa and a side of coconut rice, plus a tropical fruit salad. For my beverage, a Caribbean sunset cocktail, rum, pineapple juice, and grenadine, its color like the final amber of dusk. As I waited, I sipped my cocktail and watched the sun slanting through the windows, tinting the buffet tables golden. Crew members delivered bread baskets and refilled water glasses. The smell of warm bread, rich fish, and ripe mango drifted through the air, soothing my anxieties. Finally, my main course arrived. A beautifully plated fillet of fish, its flesh flaky and vibrant, beneath a heap of bright mango salsa. I closed my eyes and took my first bite, the sweet and tangy flavors igniting the memory of sun-baked beaches and salt-kissed hair. It was more than just a meal. It was a sensory declaration of my new beginning. After dinner, I ventured up to the promenade deck, a long wraparound walkway just below the top deck. Here, passengers strolled barefoot in the fading light, wrapped in light shawls as the breeze whispered around them. I walked slowly, taking in the soft glow of deck lights, reflecting on the water's surface. Off in the distance, the shoreline fused into a blur of pastel colors as night fell. I felt both small and infinite. In the vastness of the sea, my problems seemed less daunting. Just under an hour later, I discovered the ship's nightclub tucked behind a nondescript door at the base of the promenade stairs. A pulsing bass beat and neon strobe lights greeted me. Inside, the dance floor was crowded with travelers caught up in the music, arms raised, moving to the DJ's infectious mix of electronic and tropical house beats. The haze of fog machines diffused the color strips of light in the darkness. I made my way to a bar stool perched on the fringe of the dance floor. The bartender introduced himself as Luis and recommended the Ocean's Whisper, a signature cocktail of blue curacao, vodka, fresh coconut cream, and a sprig of mint. As soon as he set the frosted glass before me, I lifted it to the neon glow and took a slow sip. The sweetness of coconut melded with the tang of citrus in each creamy mouthful. This drink felt like a promise. Yes, I was here alone, but I had the entire night and every possibility it held before me. Halfway through a thumping EDM track, the lights dimmed and a hush fell. Then an announcement crackled through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, up next, Heart of the Sea, a ballad about loss, healing, and the power of resilience. Let the ocean remind you that even the roughest waves give way to calm shores. A wave of gentle piano chords swept through the speakers, followed by a soulful voice singing of storms and new beginnings. I closed my eyes and let the melody wash over me. Images of my friend's betrayal swirled in my mind, but beneath them rose the memory of my vow on that Seattle balcony. I will not be defined by your omission. A single tear slid down my cheek, mingling with the salt of the air. In that moment, I felt a fierce exhilaration. I had faced a storm of emotions and chosen to rise above. The applause that followed the final note felt like a benediction, a crowd's acknowledgement that I belonged here, even if only momentarily. The next morning, I woke before sunrise and slipped out onto my balcony. The ocean stretched out in a glassy expanse, its surface awash in soft aurora hues, pink, lavender, pale gold. My phone lay on a side table, and I found a flurry of social media notifications waiting. One was from Maya, a screenshot of a malicious Instagram post reading, "Looks like Emily's at it again, playing victim to get attention. Typical." Beneath it scrolled more venom. She's such a narcissist, desperate for sympathy. Can't believe we fell for it. My chest tightened as I scrolled. But the morning breeze tugged at my hair, and I took a steadying breath. I opened my group chat list, long pressed on each name: Maya, Jessica, Tiffany, Colleen, and muted every conversation. If someone truly wanted the truth, they'd have to ask me directly. I tapped out a private note in my journal app. Let them talk. My truth is stronger than their rumors. Setting the phone aside, I lifted my face to the rising sun and let its warmth chase away the last edge of anger. In a few minutes, the ship's tender would shuttle passengers to our next destination, a secluded beach in the Bahamas known as Sunstone Beach. Today's ritual awaited me, a guided session of release and renewal. I dressed in quick dry shorts and a lightweight tank top, slipped on flip-flops, and headed down to the gangway. Sunstone Beach was like a dream, fine white sand stretching out under brilliant blue skies, framed by leaning coconut palms and the gentle arc of turquoise water. We arrived in a small tender that bobbed alongside the beach's shallow coral reef. As I disembarked onto the sand, I felt the grains shift beneath my feet, each one like a tiny blessing promising renewal. Our guide, Anthony, a tall man with a wide-brimmed straw hat and wind-blown hair, led us under the coconut canopy. He spread out a small wooden tray containing bowls of blessing grains, sea salt infused with lime zest and crushed mint leaves, arranged in concentric circles. Each bowl glowed white and green in the midday sun. Take a pinch of these grains, Anthony instructed gently. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and think of something you're ready to release. Regrets, resentments, doubts. Let them dissolve like these salts in the water. I pinched a few grains and pressed them between my palms. The cool texture felt comforting. I closed my eyes as the tang of lime and mint came through. Flashes of my old friend's betrayal flickered in my mind, and I whispered. I released the pain of being erased. Exhaling, I let tears slip free, as though the breeze itself had carried them away. I felt my shoulders loosen as though I were shedding an invisible weight. Next, Anthony led us to a shallow cove, where the water washed gently over our feet. He instructed us to form a circle, knee-deep in water, facing inward. Now, he said, each of you say aloud one thing you wish to leave behind. The woman next to me, a travel writer from New York, murmured, anxiety. An older gentleman from Florida said, regret. When my turn came, my voice was barely above a whisper. I leave behind the memory of betrayal. As my words settled, I let the gentle waves swirl around me, each ripple a small apology from the sea, each one pulling a tiny shard of grief from my heart. Then Anthony handed each of us a small empty glass jar. Now, fill your jar with this sand, he said, gesturing to a smooth patch of beach sprinkled with radiant golden grains. As you scoop, think of new qualities you want to embrace: courage, self-love, empathy. Let each layer of sand represent a choice to carry forward. I bent down, scooped a handful of sand, and repeated silently, I choose confidence, I choose compassion, I choose hope. With each scoop, the jar filled, and I felt a growing warmth inside. By the time my jar brimmed, I felt anchored, as though I had planted a flag on new territory within myself. I placed my jar on a driftwood altar Anthony had built, a reminder that renewal is a cycle, like the tides that come and go. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of coral and purple, we reboarded the tender. Back on the ship, I propped my wet feet on the rail, feeling the deck sway under me. My heart felt lighter than it had in weeks. The memory of Sunstone Beach was already imprinted in my mind. Sand in my toes, salt on my skin, and the sense that I could breathe. That evening, I returned to my cabin to find a gentle knock. It was Devon, the cabin steward who had earlier brought me tea and cookies. He held a small tray with steaming cups of chamomile tea and freshly baked oatmeal raisin cookies. "Hey," he said quietly, "I thought you might like a little something tonight. I remember you said the day on Sunstone Beach was important to you." Devon had quietly delivered fresh towels every morning, always adding a small handmade chocolate on my pillow. He had an easy smile and an accent I hadn't quite placed at first, until he told me he was named after the Devonshire coast, where his parents abandoned cultured life to sail the world. I motioned for him to come in. He set the tray on my desk and poured tea into my mug, the steam curling into the cabin's still air. "You know," he began softly, "I was once erased too, by someone I thought would never betray me. I was supposed to take a road trip in college, and at the last minute, she uninvited me. No explanation. I felt as though someone had yanked me off the map." He paused, nodding toward the window. "So I joined cruise ships. I travel the world, and I finally understood that the sea has a way of healing us. Each wave that crashes and recedes teaches us that nothing is permanent, that we can always begin again." I sipped the tea and let its warm sweetness fill me. "Thank you," I said. "It means a lot to talk to someone who understands." We talked for hours about families, heartbreaks, regrets, and hopes, until the clock read nearly 2 in the morning. I felt a peaceful exhaustion. When Devon finally slipped out, I realized I had slept for the first time in days. Only a couple hours later, the ship jolted. The overhead announcement crackled. "Attention passengers, a tropical storm is approaching. Please secure personal items and prepare to don life jackets. Crew members, initiate safety procedures." My heart pounded as I threw on a light jacket and followed other passengers towards the deck. The lower decks were ablaze with activity. Crew members hurriedly distributed life jackets, families braced themselves, and some passengers clutched their phones, broadcasting the approaching storm via live stream. Rain began to fall in sheets, and the wind howled like an angry beast. Despite the warnings, I felt compelled to go outside. A crew member tried to block me. "Ma'am, it's too dangerous. Please stay inside." I shook my head. "I need to feel this. I need to prove I can stand my ground." With that, I slipped past him onto the outer deck. The wind pelted me like icy needles. The rain stung my face. I gripped the railing tightly as the ship pitched and rolled. The horizon had vanished under a wall of dark clouds and churning waves. Thunder boomed overhead, and lightning illuminated the ocean's chaotic surface. In that moment, I felt my own inner storm. The swirling resentment, self-doubt, and pain roar with equal ferocity. I closed my eyes, clenched my teeth, and let the storm batter me. With every gust that slammed into the ship, I whispered to myself, "I will not be defined by others. I will not be erased." Another tremendous roll of thunder shook the hull, and I pressed my forehead against the railing, forcing myself to stand tall. The wind almost tore me off my feet, but I dug in, letting the storm's raw power remind me of my own resilience. Gradually, the wind abated, the thunder receded, and the rain tapered off into a fine drizzle. The clouds began to break, revealing a sliver of moonlight. The deck still swayed, but far less violently. I opened my eyes to a calmer sea, where scattered flashes of phosphorescence winked beneath waves. My clothes were soaked, but I felt an exhilarating calm. I had weathered my own turmoil. I had faced a storm at sea and stood strong. I pressed my forehead to the railing, letting the residual tremor pass through me. The ship's engines hummed, methodical, comforting. I took a slow breath and whispered, "If you erase me, I will still stand." The next morning, after the tropical storm passed, I stepped onto the deck to find a weathered envelope tucked into the railing, gleaming faintly with saltwater stains. With trembling fingers, I pried it open and unfolded a letter written in Brooke's familiar handwriting, my oldest friend from high school. "Dear Emily, I owe you the truth. I lied because it felt easier than facing my own conflicts with others. Excluding you wasn't about not wanting you there. It was about us being too scared to confront the tension we'd allowed to fester. I know this doesn't excuse our cruelty, but I am so deeply sorry. From the moment I saw your posts on Instagram, your photos on that deck, sunsets on white sand, I knew I had betrayed someone who meant the world to me. I hope you can forgive me. If you can't, I understand. You deserve so much more than this pain I've caused. I will spend every day in hopes of making amends. Love always, Brooke." My chest tightened as I pressed the letter to my heart. Brooke and I had once been inseparable, rumored to be the next great literary duo, scribbling late-night poetry in college dorm hallways. Her words felt like a lifeline thrown into the turbulent waters of my emotions. I closed my eyes, exhaled slowly, and felt the anger inside me soften into a warm release. I whispered, "Thank you for telling me." Tucking the letter into my pocket, I watched the calm ocean expand before me. In that serene morning glow, I recognized that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It simply meant acknowledging the pain, letting it go, and finding compassion for both myself and the friend who had hurt me. I slid my hands into my pockets, felt the crinkled paper under my fingers, and breathed in the dawn's promise. That evening, on the observation deck, a small bonfire was lit for a farewell to the islands celebration. Paper lanterns dangled from palm fronds, their warm light glowing against the darkening sky. The air smelled of salt, coconut oil, and cedar from the lanterns' wicks. Passengers gathered around boards of conch fritters, mini rum punches, and platters of tropical fruit slices. A steel drum band played a soft, rhythmic melody that echoed off the water. To my surprise, I saw Brooke there, clutching a rum punch, looking both nervous and relieved. I had feared confrontation, but also yearned for closure. She spotted me, and her face lit up with a tentative smile. I signaled her over. As she approached, I felt a swirl of emotions: relief, tenderness, residual hurt. "Hey," I said softly. She gave a shaky laugh. "I can't tell you how sorry I am." I touched her arm. "I needed you to tell me, Brooke. Thank you for finding the courage to do that." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I was terrified I'd lost you forever." I smiled through my own tears. "You're here now. Let's not lose sight of everything we once shared." We stepped away from the crowd to a pair of empty Adirondack chairs overlooking the waves. The final rays of the sun painted the sky in shades of rose and violet. In the distance, the faint glow of Miami's lights shimmered. For a moment, nothing needed to be said. The rock and sway of the deck, the distant melody of steel drums, and the rustle of palm fronds formed a gentle soundtrack to our reunion. Finally, she spoke. I wish I had handled everything differently. I was afraid of conflict, of hurting you, but I ended up crushing you instead. I took a deep breath. I needed you to face me, not just hide behind a group chat. That hurt more than anything else. But I also needed you to grow. That's why I came here, to find my own footing. Because I realized I am my own worth. No one can erase that except me. She exhaled a shaky sigh. I understand, and I am so proud of you. You turned betrayal into something bigger, into this journey of self-discovery. That's the Emily I know. I nodded, a tear slipping down my cheek. Thank you. We sat in companionable silence, sharing that fragile promise of forgiveness and renewal. The waves kissed the hull in rhythmic pulses, and I felt my pain knit itself into the sea's vast tapestry, carried away with each ebb. On my final night at sea, the ship hosted an open mic storytelling showcase in the main lounge. When I saw the sign-up sheet, I scribbled my name at the top. Later, when the host called, Emily Davis, I stepped onto the small stage, bathed in a single spotlight. 30 pairs of eyes focused on me, strangers and new friends alike. I paused, aiming to cradle my words in thoughtful intention. Then I began. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily. A week ago, I felt completely invisible. I discovered my closest friends had planned a trip without me, deliberately erasing me from their lives. In that moment, I felt worthless, as though I no longer existed. Fueled by that pain, I booked a last-minute Caribbean cruise to prove my value on my own terms. I embarked alone, expecting to lick my wounds. Instead, I found new friends. Mia, who reminded me I am worthy of kindness. Marcus, who taught me to laugh at adversity. Celeste, who showed me the power of empathy. And Devon, whose quiet presence healed me. I faced literal storms, both meteorological and emotional, yet I stood my ground. I learned that being forgotten by some does not diminish my worth. I discovered the ocean's capacity to carry away my sorrow, and the sun's promise of new beginnings. I learned that forgiveness is not forgetting, it is releasing. Tonight, I stand before you not as a broken girl, but as someone who reclaimed her voice. As my final words echoed through the lounge, a wave of applause rose from the audience. Strangers offered hugs and high fives. New friends pressed congratulations on my shoulder. As I stepped down from the stage, I felt tears streaming, this time from a place of jubilation instead of pain. For the first time in weeks, I felt wholly seen. A few hours later, on my balcony under a canopy of stars, I opened my journal, once blank, now brimming with reflections. I traced my finger along a line. Betrayal led me to healing. Erasure led me to self-discovery. I wrote in shaky script about the rituals on Sunstone Beach, the storm I faced alone, the apologies that finally arrived, and the moment I claimed my voice on stage. The ocean beneath me lapped gently, as though applauding each word. I closed the journal and placed it on the small table. The ship rocked beneath me in a quiet, reassuring rhythm. I thought of Seattle, rain-softened sidewalks, evergreen trees, familiar faces waiting for me. I would return to that city, a changed person. I no longer needed anyone's invitation to feel whole. I had found my worth in making my own plan, in facing my own storms, and in sharing my own story. The ship's horn sounded, a low, resonant note that drifted across the sea. I lifted a hand in a silent salute to the horizon, where the night sky met the water in a ribbon of inky black. I whispered to the waves, I am here, and I am enough. As I let myself drift toward sleep, the wind whispered promises of new beginnings. The ocean cradled me, and my entire being felt as fluid and infinite as the water beneath me. From the fragments of betrayal and loneliness, I had built a new life, one where I was never again invisible, where I held the pen to write my next chapter. And under that canopy of stars, rocked by the gentle tide, I knew that I had truly found myself.